Wow. You're about to watch an amazing episode of The Bold New Normal where I spend time with Cecil Nutakor talking about EdTech. It's so important that we continue to build all our structures and institutions to create the bold new normal. But over and above this, you will just simply enjoy what is effectively a journey of at least 3 decades. This is such a human story of persistence, resilience, focus, dedication to bring a passion that lies deep inside to life to the benefit of everyone. I left the session overawed. I was like, wow, there's so much to unpack, so much to learn. You will enjoy this episode. Let's do this. What would it take to really create a prosperous Africa where every African has the opportunity to thrive and not just survive through life? That's what we talk about at the Bold New Normal podcast. We talk to leaders about their areas of endeavor, the work that they're doing to bring the bold new normal to life within their sphere of influence, their staying power, and the fact that they serve as an example of what is possible. Join us. Oh, tell me about the COVID years. So 2015 was a pivot.
Yeah.
And you talked about partnering, enabling, disrupting. Then you fast forward another 5 years, and unfortunately, the world is hit with COVID.
Yeah.
What happens then?
So
what happened to eCampus?
Something happened in 2019. As if we knew COVID was happening. What happened? I mean, you were in the room when we had that strategic. I mean, we had a board meeting. When after I met you, and then finally, I mean, that was the second time I met you. That time I had my boy.
Yeah.
Right? I was carrying my boy in the basket thing. Kids.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you agreed that, okay, you will join the board.
Hey.
So when you agreed to join the board, and I think you came for that board meeting January 2019, we were all over the place. And I remember what you said. You were like, look, we need a strategy session. We need to strip everything and look at this again. You have a nice product. You have a model, but you don't have execution. Like, it's all over the place. So you agreed and proposed that we reschedule to do a whole strategy session. You haven't heard of that? I'm like, what is that? Suzanne was like, serious business. So that strategy session, I remember we had to do a SWOT analysis.
Mm-hmm.
You were hard on us, especially me. You were so hard. You were asking.
I didn't know you were going to bring this up.
No, you were asking tough questions. I mean, I could feel it. Like, I mean, you've been the first female CEO of a telecom company. I mean, you ran things. So you were treating me as though I've gotten to your level. I was too small.
I was treating you as though I need to challenge you because what you have is great. And sometimes in that greatness that you have, you need someone to tell you that there's another place you can be to really unpack it. It's recent. There's been a podcast with Trevor Noah on it where he talked about kindness and how he talked about how sometimes people think that kindness only means just telling people what they want to hear. And he said, that's not kindness. Sometimes kindness means that you have to tell people what they need to hear.
And
that's how when you're actually helping them, right? But if you say, if I say this, he will think this, and then he could be something greater, but you stopped yourself from doing it because you think kindness means only niceness. It doesn't mean being rude and disrespectful, for anyone who's listening to be clear, but it means asking people the tough question. But you can take it. You're a tough guy.
I mean, like, I was so happy because it really drove things home. And I mean, look at the room. We had all the support. And if I look back at those pictures, I was like, imagine I had to pay these people. There's no way I could afford the knowledge, the expertise and experience in that room. So we better not fail. So that strategy we did a 4-year strategic document. The SWOT analysis, go to market. That has been the foundation that has brought us to where we are. The year 2020, we reviewed it before the rebranding, but that drove us. And if you remember in the SWOT analysis, our threats we identified was our cloud infrastructure. If we default, the company doesn't exist. Content. if we do not invest in content, what's the use of the read, listen, watch, practice, discuss in the app? These two things changed everything. So we forgot about all the fancy pitching for competition. I know you're not really in favor of those things. You're like traveling, pitching, focus on the work. I'm like, hey, this madam, right? So we focus on just these two things. Making sure that we never run out of what? Resources to pay for our AWS cloud infrastructure, because without it, we don't exist. And then number two, every penny we have must go into content development, because that's what we are actually selling.
That's what you're selling.
Right?
You understand your customer, but you have to sell.
Exactly. And then number three, when we are ready, because remember, those days that I was contacting you when we were at Airtel, we were supposed to partner so that you can add eCampus to the Airtel Flex group of apps. It was Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I think Snapchat. And we said there was no education tool. But when you looked at the content we had and all of that, you were like, no, we will shoot ourselves in the foot, because the traffic you will drive, because you be on your billboards, your t-shirt, then they'll drive the traffic there only to come and see just 5 subjects, 4 subjects.
Yeah.
So we were too young for that, that kind of noise.
Yeah. So just for clarity of those listening, the conversation about joining the Airtel store, Play Store, was around 2015. Yes. Right? And that's when there was that gap. But when we were doing the strategy session, it was 2019.
The time has passed.
What I love about the way you tell this story, and I hope people listening are taking this away, is the fact that you always appreciate partnership.
Yes.
In that room, when you were hearing all the feedback, you didn't sit back and go, but I'm the CEO of this company. I built this for the last 20-something years. You people were not there when I was selling diskettes, so you can't tell me what I should do. You listened. And this is an important skill that applies to all of us. Even myself at this stage, I still tell people, give me feedback. Tell me what I can do more. Tell me what I can do better. Because that's a massive credit to you. And this point that I made, and I still stand by that point, about not overdoing the road shows, the competitions, the presentations. I feel that a lot of young African entrepreneurs get distracted by that. And they get distracted by also what is prize money that can be important, but can distract them from their bigger vision and mission and where they can really go. And I felt that as CEO, you had so much to give, but you only have so much time and so much energy on any given day. So what is getting your attention? Because you are the vision. You are the idea. You are the company, not because all of your colleagues don't matter, but this is born out of you. You've got to carry it. And when you're not around carrying it, it will suffer. So I'm really glad that the feedback landed well.
I was so happy to have this conversation, because, look, I know this is long overdue. People need to hear this story. And I remember you said something to me, even in 2015, before the strategy session at the board. You told me that data revenue for the telco industry is plateauing. So they are looking for new ways to generate revenue. Tech has taken off. So those who missed it have missed it. But the next one could be EdTech. So I should start considering partnerships with the telcos. So it's good I came to you, but we don't have enough content to blow. Otherwise, we will destroy ourselves. We shoot ourselves in the foot. So 4 years after that, we had research session, and it was still obvious that with content, I'm like, no. So we started pouring everything into content. We spent a lot of money into content. We structured our AWS. We started having direct conversation with AWS directly in South Africa. Got some deals. Awesome. They gave us some credit. Right? We created a dollar account so that all the angels that were investing were sending them. They're putting their credit card or dollar cards inside AWS so that they will deduct it direct. Don't give us the money to come and put in Ghana. We did all those because that strategy session exposed it. And guess what? I touched down from Boston, from Harvard on the 7th of March 2020, 9th of March lockdown. 11th of March, my phone is ringing non-stop. Why? We want eCampus. I'm like, why? COVID. Why? Lockdown. In March alone, March of 2020 alone, we had over 5,000 new accounts. The highest from all the 2015 combined. in March of 2020 alone. And guess what? We had done the cloud infrastructure properly so we could take the heat, the traffic. And then we had done a lot of content so people could have like, oh my goodness me.
You had a ready business.
I'm like, imagine we didn't do that. We would have crashed. The request would have been more. Even that AWS sent us email that we need to open some more resources.
Yeah, capacity, yeah.
So that was like, hey, when they say strategy session, wow, this is what it means. I remember that time I had an office at Adenta, and we had this projector that we project a dashboard and we see what's going on. And what I've always been sitting every night waiting to see to cross a threshold, it has passed, right? A factor of 3. And I'm there and I'm all teary, and the team is shouting, we did it. And I just walked to the washroom and I just broke down. I'm like, oh my.
Oh, bless. They must have been tears of joy that had been pent up for over 20 years.
The interesting thing was that, see, we did content, junior high, senior high, nursing, midwifery. Who would have thought to do content for nursing and midwifery essential? And it all came in handy when the lockdown hit. And when we did law school, so we're just going on a content spending spree, and it paid off. Like, see, we knew COVID was coming. So that is where everybody realized that, okay, this guy, he's been consistent. He pulled it off. He's been able to absorb the pressure. And around the time, I mean, Vodafone gave us a whitelist. They zero rated our IP. The same conversation we were having in 2014. Now they did it.
Okay.
They reached out the zero rate. EdTech, everybody zero rate. So now, and we also gave out promo codes. eCampus 2020. So everybody, it was nice. It was nice. So that is where we realized, okay, we've got product market fit. And I'm grateful to all of you. Trust me, that 2019 strategy session was the best thing that ever happened to eCampus.
That's awesome. So Tara, this is a wonderful story, and it's interesting because obviously we didn't kind of rehearse. I wasn't expecting all of this. So thank you, because for me it's a great reminder as well. And it's a reminder of the fact that we need to keep building. I tell people now that always have seeds in your pocket that you're sowing. Keep sowing. Whoever you sow with, wherever you sow, some you will see, some you won't see, some will happen and you won't see. And I'm not trying to, it's not about taking any credit at all, but it's the recognition that thank you for sharing that at least a seed sown was relevant. I thought that you coming to the Bold New Normal conference in 2023 was so important, but because it's a conference, you don't get enough time to really unpack your story, which is why I said, Cecil, I need you on the podcast to really unpack once we started this. So tell us what eCampus today.
Yeah.
We've had the journey. You've got so much. You've gone beyond schooling. You're doing law. You're doing it at midway. Tell us, what does eCampus offer today as an EdTech solution?
Predictability, the very thing I was looking for. So eCampus, you see it as your feedback loop. It doesn't matter whether you are in corporates, you are in healthcare education, you are in junior high, basic school, senior high, law school. You need some level of feedback to know what you're learning, whether you're making progress or not, where your strengths and weaknesses are, what you need to identify. So normally we say we help you measure, analyze, and predict your readiness for examination, your readiness for employment, and then your compliance readiness. That's what we do at the core.
Wow.
And we
readiness
build that
for exam.
Yeah, readiness for exam.
Can we repeat that? Yeah. Readiness for exam.
Readiness for employment, and then compliance readiness.
I just love it. It's so encapsulated, but you go back to the beginning of our conversation and I talked about heart, and on an education piece, you're preparing people to really be able to make an impact.
So to put it in perspective, right? When we looked at, you remember that 2019 strategy section, we had to redefine our vision. We had to redefine our mission, our purpose. So that's where all this thing came from. So we were like, okay, what's the real deal here? So we said, okay, we want to help people, the big picture vision, learn smarter, become employable, attain prosperity. That was how we defined the brand. Learn smarter, become employable, and attain prosperity. So that's broad. So how? What's the mission? How? To be able to do that, then we need a tool that can measure, analyze, and predict readiness for examination to prove that you learned smarter. Readiness for employment to prove that you became employable. And then compliance readiness so that if you get the job, you stay compliant so you don't get fired. If we are able to achieve that, then we are convinced that we could accelerate the path to prosperity for Africans or those in the global south. Because, I mean, I'll be 43 in a few days.
You're growing. Now
Yeah.
you're growing, Cecil.
And I've seen my uncles, I've seen my parents, I've seen people who became at least significantly, I mean, fairly prosperous per our global south standard. Not until their 60s, some even into their 70s, because before you could say they are prosperous, before they can't even afford insurance. I mean, so I'm looking at like, even me myself, with all what I've been through, 43, I'm still not there. I can't still insure my kitchenware. You know, I still do firefighting here and there when some emergency comes. So when? Until I'm 40, until I'm 80? Why? So how don't we accelerate it so that at least by 30, you should achieve what those before us are achieving at 60? Let's push the path toward prosperity. So if we can help you learn smarter and pass all your exams at first attempt, those 3 years I wasted rewriting, I wouldn't be struggling. Okay? And once you enter the tertiary institution and we guide you so that you become employable, we predict your employability score quickly, your internship. By the time you are in third year, you already know you are working at this company because you've done 4 internships. Your employability score is at par with some of the existing employees in the company. So there is data to back your credibility. So quickly, by the time you are 24, you have a decent job. 25, you are building into the system. So by 35, 10 years on a good job. Come on.
Yeah. And I love the way you unpack that, because it's another challenge we have. We tend to think in Ghana and in Africa that it's not a rush, and we tell ourselves, oh, it's fine if I take X number of years to do it. It doesn't matter. It does matter, because there is a value attached to our time and our energy. Awesome. So, Cecil, let's spend some time now unpacking and talking a bit about the reality and the systems. What's the reality of the experience of building out an EdTech business in Ghana and beyond, because your clients go beyond Ghana? And what are some of the system supports, from an infrastructure point of view, regulation, payment systems, cultural trust, anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I think it's all of that and then something else, What we've noticed is the appetite for consumers to pay for EdTech products is unfortunately very low.
Okay.
And because the appetite to pay is so low, it's also affecting the appetite to invest. Because investors want 3x, 5x returns. And if they look at the trend and the historicals, most EdTech products turn out to be free to the end user, paid for by some donor agency or some government. So the actual end user or the parents or the guardians of the end user tend to see it as a luxury. And I can understand them now, because as a parent, once you buy everything that's on the school's prospectus, you paid school fees. Any other thing feels like extras. So that is the real problem, because if the population is paying for the service, then investors can pour in more money, then we can improve infrastructure, we can improve regulatory, we can improve cultural trust, we can improve connectivity, talent. But then if the investment is strict because the investor is not sure or doesn't have confidence on getting their returns, then it becomes a problem. So that, for me, is the real challenge to EdTech. FinTech gets money far more easier than EdTech. Agritech gets money
Of course.
far more easier than EdTech. So I don't know if, because we've had this notion of education is a public good, so people tend to feel like, that's a bit of a stretch. But that is changing. So we're doing some serious work to change that. What we're doing at eCampus is to make sure we get onto the prospectus. Because once you're on the prospectus of the school, the parents are comfortable with it.
Exactly.
So in the
Yeah.
past 3 years, we've been making it clear that our competitors are not other edtechs. Our competitors at eCampus, our competitors are publishing houses. They are able to get their paperback textbooks onto prospectus. How did they get there? We have to be on prospectus. And we are there now. So
Yeah, that's great. So on that point of getting on the prospectus, though, how does that then tie with the fact that EdTech typically increases access? Because if you think about it, if you are on the prospectus, you're on the prospectus of somebody who's already going to school. So how does then how do you then use EdTech to increase access? And how do you measure whether it's really translating into economic mobility?
yeah, so that's a very important angle. That's a very important angle. Now, at eCampus, we define access as feedback, access to feedback, not necessarily access to a fancy device or internet. No, the real access is feedback. All right. So once you have access to feedback, then we believe that you can then learn smarter, apply the feedback to become better at what you're doing. Then you become employable. And once you become employable and you get into a decent employment or work arrangement very early in your life, then your chances of attaining prosperity, which is economic mobility, the chances of you having intergenerational earnings higher than your parents, which is then referring to economic mobility, are higher. All right. But then if you don't get access to feedback and you go through mass production, you end up not adding any value to yourself. You are not employable. Then you become a burden. Then you realize that even your parents were earning more than you are earning. Then that whole economic mobility collapses. So for us, access is defined here as
So
feedback.
okay, so let me unpack that for everyone who's listening, because obviously we've spoken at length about what it means to have feedback. So what you're saying is that even for people who are in education, they all don't have access to feedback on how they're performing to improve their performance. So what eCampus provides is that access to feedback to help them continue to improve, whether it's through their educational journey or their professional journey. So with that in mind, and I know you talked about the offline opportunities to engage with eCampus, but if we think about a continent where internet penetration is still probably at best half the population, I know a country like Ghana specifically has much higher penetration because of coverage, but not everybody has access to the internet as freely. Even when people have access, they can't always afford the access. So how realistic is it to have a fully digital education as a universal solution?
Yeah, it's still realistic. From the point of technology, it is very realistic. We have Starlink, we have satellite based internet. So, practically, as we speak, wherever you are on this planet, if you really, really want to connect to the internet, it's no more an issue of technology not being available. A decade ago, I would have said, yeah, we don't have global. Today, it's not a problem. comes back to what I said, investment, right? So if you look at it clearly, when you're designing your solution or your product, you need to look at it from a vertical integration point of view. That's what we had to learn the hard way. If you just do your, there is no touch point. Where are the tablets, the phones, the laptops? You're waiting on somebody to provide that. You don't have a business model. Okay. You find a way to get that. Where is your content? Is it accredited? Was it done up to top notch? Is it not consumable? Do people trust it? You don't have that. You still don't have a business model. So from just being a technology company building apps, you are now transforming to a hardware company, transforming to a content company. And then if you don't provide the internet connectivity, you are waiting for a third party to do it, you still don't have a business model. You need to now provide the connectivity. Then you need to put all of that together, analyze the data, and provide intelligence. So what we did in the last 3 years was to invest heavily into that vertical integration so we can own the whole supply chain. By doing that, we've realized that the cost of bringing each touch point or each student online has gone down significantly. So owning the entire loop makes access more realistic. Now, the economics of scale start to play in, and then you realize that you can actually go to anywhere and make it possible. So I give you an example. As I speak to you, we've brought online, or we call it on air. So what we do is our internet connectivity is called eCampus Air. Then we have the eCampus content, eCampus touch points, eCampus app, and eCampus intelligence. So when we come to a school, just because we want to give you access to feedback, we need to invest in 5 things, which is internet, content, touch point, which could be tablet, laptop, phone, the app itself, and then the algorithms or the AI to give intelligence, just because you want to provide access to feedback. To see how the definition of access changes your business structures, your investment pattern. If you say, oh, I'm giving access to an app, it limits what you have to do. Then you start running into bottlenecks. So schools like Abiasimine in the Bono region came online. Kijaji, Laura in Upper West, Zimbala in Upper East, Damongo in Savannah. So we're bringing all these schools online because we figure out the vertical integration, manage the cost, manage the investment, and we're able to make this realistic. Hopefully, with time, we'll be able to bring every single school on this country online. And because we're using satellite technology, we can easily expand that access to homes, community centers, and then there we go. They become more and more realistic. But it all comes back to investment. And without users paying, investors will still be cautious. So the loop keeps coming back.
Okay. Okay, but you do have paid users now, so that's a good thing.
Of course.
So if I think about that and I think about young people, I think about unemployment, and I think about the fact that unemployment is relatively high, right? What I mean by that is sustained structural employment where people have some consistency. So how should education providers start to measure success beyond course completion, right? Because it's one thing to say someone has finished a course, but what is the real measure of success?
I'll put it this way. What problem can the graduate or the education you've provided, what problem can whoever went through that education solve? If we can start thinking about it that way, then we're heading somewhere. And we don't have to think too far away. We can just reference the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Let's just reference that. At the bottom is the word physiological needs, right? So shelter, water, safety, food, sleep, those things, right? Now, if we look at Ghana as a country, how are we doing with shelter? We still have a housing deficit of what? 1.8 to 2 million what? Housing that people need. Yet we have some 1.3 million houses that are empty. People cannot afford to buy them or rent them. What does that tell you? That's 2 problems there. One, We don't have the capacity to build. We don't have alternative materials to build cheaper. And even when we build, we don't have enough people in the prosperity bracket to afford them. So how do we train the next generation of our future to develop skills, desires, imaginations, ability to provide alternative material to build cheaper and faster? Do you get my point? How do we then what? Move people through that? Yeah.
I get your point. So, but in that context, then, how do education providers measure success? Right? What is the measure of success that they should apply in thinking about the people who have completed their courses as solutions to these challenges?
So, like I said, if I take a cohort of my year group, how many of us have solved any real problem? Majority can end up with the government sector, work with the ministries, agencies, and departments, but are they solving real problems? Because until they solve real problems, they don't create new jobs, right? So for me, the number one indicator for quality or success for all the universities, primary schools, junior highs, senior highs, these people that I'm preparing for the world, what problem can they solve? What problem am I preparing them to solve? And we need to be intentional about it. Are we preparing this group of people to come and solve the food security problem? So we know we are preparing 2 million students, intentionally position the curriculum. In other words, what? Brainwashing them to become the future solution providers for food insecurity. So that the 12.5 million Ghanaians who go to sleep hungry every day can disappear. That's 38% of our population. But if you just do general training, you go do general arts, you go and do science, there's no intentionality. From after basic school, we have to be intentional. Basic school, let's not worry them. Right? I mean, crèche to JHS3, basic school. Let them focus on numeracy, literacy, and then what? Culture, and then express themselves. But from senior high school, this cohort that are coming this year, 600,000 people, 30% of them must be trained to be plumbers, electricians, bricklayers. You get what I mean? Surveyors. Because we have a housing deficit of 2 units. You get what I mean? This other 100,000 must be trained on water safety. They should come up with ideas to purify water. Our grandmother and grandfathers used to purify water using traditional means. Bring those traditional means to the classroom. Let them experiment. Let them iterate, fail. By the time they graduate 3 years from secondary school, they have a prototype. They go continue at the university level, 4 years. Then we have a water purification system designed by ourselves using our own traditional means, and it's easy to deploy. So that 76% of our population household who drink contaminated water can be addressed. If we keep making general education won't go anywhere. We have to be intentional, pick a problem, train 400,000 people towards it, maybe 10% to fix it, and employ the remaining 90%. That's my view.
So I see, but what you're saying is that we need to start with the end in mind. Measuring success beyond course completion is about what is the end that we have in mind? What are we solving for as a country? And see whether the people that we're producing through education are actually solutions to that. So aligned to that line of that thinking, then I'm wondering about regulators and employers and all these other people who will be the intake mechanism for these young people. And so we're going through the EdTech route. They're going to come out with digital credentials, right? In a digital world of EdTech. We know that accreditation is a gatekeeper in education because it determines whether something is good enough or not so good enough, so on and so forth. So do you think we need any structural change to accreditation? Do you think that any of these future employers need to change their approach to engaging with digital credentials?
Definitely. Change is the only constant, and change is what is so difficult for these legacy institutions to handle, right? But I think the whole idea of credibility of digital credentials is disappearing. Because look, the depth, it's disappearing. The depth of insight available through your digital credentials cannot be matched to your traditional certificate. Because the paper trail, the evidence that I actually did this, I took this assessment, I watched this video, I took this test, the paper trail is there. There are no biases. If you didn't achieve it, you didn't achieve it. So employers are more confident when they see those evidence, and they can measure it themselves through their own metrics, their own frameworks, and say, okay, I'm making the right choice. But if you go to the traditional institution, they give you a transcript. The employer has little or no way to verify the credibility of that transcript. If you come to me that you are an AWS cloud engineer, it's easier for me to verify that than when you come to me from what? University of Ghana, that you have a PhD in political science. I mean, I can't measure that. You see what I mean? So as an employer, as an employer, I prefer the ones that I can verify so that I don't make a 6 months hiring mistake and later have to lay you off. So that's the point. So the structural adjustment that is required is a trilogy, right? It's a trilogy. So there is a regulator who is relying on the employer to voice out their frustrations so that they can know what to change. Because what the ultimate is the employer. They need those words, round pegs, not to be in square holes. But the educational institution or the academia, because they become so big and reluctant to change, they are the ones rather trying to sabotage digital credentials, make them seem as though they are not relevant, because they are not adapting quickly. So they are what? Lobbying regulators not to allow digital credentials into the mainstream because they can't compete. But the employer has appetite for digital credentials. So it is more of a friction that they need to look at carefully and put the citizen at the center. All this friction and lobbying, who suffers is the ordinary citizen who just want to be what? Credible enough to be given an opportunity to be the best they can be. So we need to take out the friction.
So let me ask you a follow up on that then, because you're saying that the digital credentials allow for a paper trail, or an electronic trail, not literal paper trail.
Yeah, a deeper insight.
So here's the thing though. There is the opportunity through technology and digital education to create more personalized learning pathways, right? And so the question is, at what point does that break down? Because if we're doing personalization at scale, it means that everybody shows up with their own version of what they've chosen to learn. Would you still advocate for a degree of standardization in that? Or is it truly open to everyone to create their own learning pathways? Does that create difficulties at the employment end of the equation, where the employer has to be able to validate against something how they feel about their credentials?
So I think the challenge is how they are defining personalization. You know, sometimes English can be very tricky. So when we say personalized, when we say personalized education, we don't mean you can learn whatever you want. No, that's not what personalized education means. You cannot learn whatever you want, but you can choose to learn how.
So I'm very disappointed. I thought you would let me. I thought you let me learn whatever I want. So now you're telling me I can't learn whatever I want.
No, you cannot learn whatever you want, but you can learn what is required however you want to. You get me? So what is required is that we have a housing deficit of 2 million. So in the next 5-10 years, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need bricklayers, we need surveyors, right? We need carpenters. That's what we need as a national security issue. So we are training 10 million of them. So you cannot decide what you want to learn. But you can choose that the carpentry, I want to learn it using virtual reality because I'm more of the visual guy. You get it? I'll choose to learn it through drawings, using the filmmaker board, using my T-square, and then my That's how I like to learn. That's my style. It makes me learn faster, remember things faster. I'll choose to just watch a simulation, or I want to go and do an apprenticeship at an actual construction site for 6 months. That's how I want to learn it. So it's being personalized for you on how you want to learn it, how your cognitive functions to make you learn faster. But it is not that you choose whatever you want to learn. No. As a matter of national development,
I like that thinking.
because remember, if we build your life well, then you can be a leader in whatever domain you are good at, then we can have national development. So national development says that we are dealing with shelter, water, and what? Food. So whatever training we are giving you must end up producing somebody that can fix that problem. But the journey to becoming that somebody to fix that problem varies based on your strength and weakness of how your brain naturally absorbs, process, and recall.
So on that note, then I guess what we're saying here, it's more about the how than the what. The what is defined. What you need to know is defined. How you learn it is where you
What's
can
personalized for
personalize
you?
it. So it's a really important distinction. What is, if you're going to be a plumber, we know what you need to know, and what we can address through EdTech is how you get that information and that knowledge. I must say that this idea of tying it to national development is really important, but equally, we have to tie it to development in ways that allow the individual to continue to have a degree of autonomy, right? Because when you told your story, for instance, you talked about one parent wanting you to do this and one parent wanting you to do another career path. I think if we can define nationally the vision of where we're going with these careers and what the opportunities are and create real pathways. I mean, in the UK, for instance, some of the highest earning people are plumbers
Plumbers.
because just a phone call to the plumber, just for them to show up, there's an amount you have to
Of
pay
course.
before any work is done.
Of
So I
course.
hear you on that. So let's double click on this where you've taken this in terms of national agenda. And if you think about government policy, then do you think there's any policy required in public institutions or any policy changes to integrate digital platforms that would allow an iterative, people use the term fail first, but I feel like people don't fully understand it you say that. When you say that, people think the goal is to fail. The goal is rather to allow people to experiment and discover failure sooner and learn from it and improve. So do you think we need some policy changes or new policies required in public institutions to allow us to integrate digital platforms that will facilitate this idea of a system that allows people to grow on their learning journey in a fail first kind of way?
We already have the policies. Trust me. Yeah, we do have an ICT for accelerated development policy as far back as when ex-president performed. And we've built on that. We even have a smart school project where the government is providing what? Tablets to the students. Okay? So the policies are there, right? The challenge why it seems that nobody feels there's a policy is that implementing the policy required significant amount of investment. You see what I mean? And the appetite to invest is not there. No, even before the introduction of digital tools, digital techniques, every year, a third of our budget goes to education already. As a nation, a third of our budget goes to education already. And we still have schools under trees. So it's really a tight place. So should we move half of what should go to health and add it to education? Others would be like, no. I also say no. Should we move a third of what goes to defense to education? Should we move a third of what goes into commerce to education? So it's a very difficult position in which the government is, after spending a third of their national budget on education already. So our argument has always been that allow private sector to be able to generate revenue from what? parents. Do not say because I've implemented free education, if a parent is willing to what? Pay 1 cedi a day so the child can have access to digital tools, you feel politically offended because you say you have a free education, but you yourself cannot provide the infrastructure for that service. Let's move away from that. The PTA Act, the Act of Parliament that created the PTA, doesn't allow the schools to levy, or the executives of the PTA to levy the parents, right? We can look at that. That's a low-hanging fruit and discuss. Since there is free education at the senior high school level, governments have provided tablets, but these tablets are in storerooms because there's no framework. There's no internet. You see the whole integration I spoke about. So we are now going in, bringing in the satellite connectivity, bringing in the content, bringing in the app, the intelligence, before those tablets that have been in the storeroom for 5 years are now becoming useful. We need to work together. And then when the parents see value, because if I'm a parent and I'm spending 1,200 on paperback textbooks, and now I get to spend what, 1 cedi a day, which is about 365 Ghana cedis a year. I'm saving almost 800 cedis a year. As a parent, allow me to make that decision. Government shouldn't say because I've made a decision to pay that money to eCampus, I am undermining the political manifesto. It doesn't have to be that petty. We need to grow out of that. Once we open that space, you will see how quickly some of these investments can yield, and we can transform the sector and help government implement these policies to the latter. That is where the real problem is.
Yeah, it's
I
interesting
suffer it
when
every day.
I hear you speak, all the passion that comes through, it's very evident that a lot of it is driven by experience, without naming names or pointing at people. It's so obvious. I'm listening to you. I'm like, who was this person that wouldn't listen to Cecil? Who was this person who thought that and the suggestion would undermine their political manifesto? Look, we joke and we laugh because obviously we're having a conversation, but ultimately what you're saying is that we have to be extremely intentional about the outcomes we want from education to support our national development. It shouldn't be education for the sake of education. And EdTech is here to really open up, specifically in this context, eCampus, to really open up to everyone. But there has to be the will for the formation that comes through this education to have national and political impact. When I say political, what I mean is that the political agenda, the bigger agenda that we need to deliver as a country. I don't mean sort of political machinations, because government is there to really help the country make progress. Or obviously, that's ultimately, it's not just the governance, govern for progress. So with that in mind, and knowing all the passions that have gone on in the journey, I want to ask you one final question. And I want you to pause for a second in thinking about it, because you probably have some really, really juicy examples, and I want us to hear them. What is one uncomfortable trade-off you've had to make to between scale and quality? You've told us all your journey. You've now talked about vertical integration. You've gone into internet access provision. It's all in a bid to get to everyone. Have you had to make a trade-off between scale and quality? And what's the uncomfortable trade-off that you've had to make?
So that's a tough one.
I knew it. I had to find one that will get to you, Cecil. You always have an answer. I need one that will get to you.
So there's a number of them. So I need to look at it. So let's take it from the structural position, right? This whole notion of running a startup was a bit of a copy and paste from Silicon Valley, right? I mean, we're all victims until we realize it's not going to work, and some of us started changing approach. But largely,
I like that. You say it louder for those in the back, because we need our contextual approach to entrepreneurship and innovation. We don't need someone else. Their environment and their context is different from our environment and context. So please say that louder for those in the back.
so I'm saying that from a structural point of view, this idea of what startups, right, was copied from Silicon Valley and pasted here almost everywhere, and it's not working. I mean, I've had my share of it. It doesn't work. So on that note, you realize that before you could attract investment, you had to keep scaling, and the quality suffers. We've seen it over and over again. So even in our case, I mean, as far back as 2016, we had operations in Monrovia, Liberia. I mean, you get what I mean? As far back as, because that was the idea scale. Then 2022, we went to Senegal, Dakar, and the plan to what? Scale into French-speaking Africa from Dakar, 16 more countries. Like 2023, 2024, Cape Town, operation scale. Then at the point, well, okay, Maputo, Mozambique, our Portuguese expansion, Malibu, right? Equatorial Guinea, our Spanish. So I'm like, okay, hold on. What's the quality of all these things? Or the fact that you have operation, you have from 3, 4 employees there. But that's what investors wanted to hear. So we're all like rushing around. Then there was no time to actually do the real work. Then we're like, okay, you know what? How about we don't need these investors? How about we don't need them? Let's say we don't need investors. Would we genuinely scale to all these countries? Are we even ready?
Mhm. Exactly.
So we analyzed and were like, you know what? It was a tough one. So I had to scale back. Yeah. So, I mean, we used to do 50-50 in terms of resource allocation for Accra, which is HQ, and then Monrovia, Dakar, Cape Town. I'm like, you know what? Pull everything to Accra. We keep 5% and share it among the other three. They can wait. We need to get it right here. Because here we're even having challenges of what? Internet connectivity. What shows who have the same problem in Monrovia, Dakar, and Cape Town? We're having problems with touch points. We're having problems with content. No. Let's stay in Accra. Let's stay in Ghana. Do the vertical integration, close the loop, so that when we move into a community, we know we have everything to go live in 24 hours and onboard everybody. After that, let's move away from the cities. We are not an Accra and Kumasi and Takrady startup. We are Ghanaian startup. Let's move to what? Savannah, Chiriponi, Northeast, right? Go to Upper West, Upper East. Go to Lekpi, 2 region. Do 2 schools. Go to Western North. If we can do that and our integration from eCampus Air to eCampus Intelligent work perfectly for 2 years, and we're able to convince the parents to pay, then we can go back to Monrovia, Dakar, and Cape Town. It was a tough call, because that means nobody wants to look at your pitch deck anymore. You are not scalable, blah, 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 blah. And like, I've already told myself I don't need that now. And I can tell you, I mean, for a fact, eCampus is one of the startups in Ghana that has been around for close to a decade with the least investment. We've raised less than $100,000 since we became live. But we're still here. We were still here. We're making revenue. I mean, we're expanding. We are the only, arguably the only EdTech startup in Ghana that has users in every district in Ghana, every single district, because of the rural banks. Every district in Ghana, we have a user. That's real. Like we are Ghanaian. And now with the schools, we are going to go even deeper. We've raised less than $150,000. Less than that.
Yeah, that's really real.
So ignoring the Silicon Valley blueprint and creating our own black print is turning out to be more viable. I'm not against
I love that.
investment.
Look,
I'm not against institutional investment. I'm not against angels. We have a lot of angels. We've not raised institutional investment yet. But I'm saying figure out your black print. Ignore the Silicon Valley blueprint. Figure out your black print. Then you can think of scale. And I'm sure most investors today will agree to what I'm saying. A decade ago, they wouldn't. Maybe half a decade, they wouldn't. So that's one thing that tough one we had to do. And it's paying off.
and I love your candor, but I also love the boldness with which you have done that and shared. And I really hope that everyone who hears from you and hears this takes it direct and personally, that actually we need to define models that work for our system to create our own prosperity. So if you had a magic wand in closing, on this part of our discussion. So if you had a magic wand on systems and reality, and you could just throw some fairy dust and make the system work together, what would that fairy dust touch as your final perspective on systems and reality?
Okay. So there's a number of things that I think are very important, right? One, we need to start taking the stakeholders a bit more seriously, right? Teachers, parents, head teachers, the directors of education. Most of the solutions I come across are so 100% student focused that they lose track of the fact that the student doesn't exist in a vacuum. The student is not an island in that ecosystem. There are other factors. So one of the things we ask ourselves before we build anything is, will this benefit all the stakeholders? Parents. So how will the parents benefit? We need to think and think and think and find a way that parents can benefit from this, directly or indirectly. The headmasters, the directors of education, be it district director, regional director, all the way to the director general, right? How would the teacher benefit? How would this reduce their workload? How would this make the teacher more efficient? Until we get 2 to 3 real benefits for each of these stakeholders, we are not building. That's very important. We are not building. So if you notice, we don't really like hype. We hardly even make noise, because those who make noise for us are the beneficiaries, but they know what we have for them. So that's the first thing I would like to send across. Another thing I want to send across is, there is this misconception that, oh, if I fail, it's because the system failed me. And the system too is saying that you failed because you were not serious. We have done everything right. We need to bring that debate to a closure, because you cannot design a system that couldn't or cannot provide real-time feedback to learners and expect learners to do better. Learning is all about feedback. So if you have a system where it takes over 62 days for a student to get feedback from the teacher because of the teacher to student ratios, the class sizes, and the semester is 90 days and 62 days to get feedback, I'm already done. How do you expect me to succeed in such a system? And for crying out loud, I'm just a teenager. I'm in secondary school. Like, what do you expect me to figure out? But if we can accept that we all need to meet ourselves halfway, then we bring the feedback loop from 62 days to 1 day. Then the system is creating a fair playing field for everybody who puts in the work to succeed.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm happy to say that's what we've been able to achieve at Opokuwari School, Abiesiman, Kijaji, Nkrankwanta, in Bono East, Zimbala, Bolga Girls, and we're going to do more. The target is to do 100 schools this year. We've done 14. We have 86 more to go, and we're going to do that for each and every one of them. We will find the investment to do it. And we're encouraging parents to embrace it and have the appetite to pay for its sustainability, so that it doesn't matter which government is in power, your children can still have access to reliable, efficient learning tools. And I can guarantee them that. We are very happy and open to work with GetFund. We work with the government. We already have partnerships with St. Louis Detail. But we are coming in as an independent player who will remain there regardless of who has to put in place a government. And finally, if I may add, this idea of education must be free, please. I am not, you see, okay, I get it, right? Education is a public good. In the global north, if you go to the Nordic countries, it's free. It's free. Go and check since when it became free and before it became free. And if you say free, it doesn't mean nobody is paying for it too. Somebody is paying for it. The fact that you are not paying for it directly doesn't mean it's free. Somebody is paying for it. The free SHS Ghana has was paid for with the oil money of this country. So somebody paid, the taxpayer paid for it. Because when we don't take care And we keep pushing this free agenda. People do not value things that are free. Human beings are wired like that. We do not value things that are free. So if we keep lying to the population that the education they're having is free, no wonder they don't take it seriously. They don't value it. They go through the system with no sense of urgency. And when they come back, they have this audacity that they have to be paid 4,000 cedis because they have a degree. A system that you didn't pay attention to because it's been heavily subsidized at the university level, it's completely free at the SHS level. And we are not telling you that the fact that it is free, we spent 14 billion cedis for you to have this education. So it is not free. The fact that your parents didn't pay that money doesn't mean that you take it for granted. And if we don't take care and we continue on this tangent, the teacher too will feel that, okay, even this is free, they are not paying for it. Why should I kill myself? The headmaster is like, it's free. Why should I even bother? No, please, it is not free. Somebody is paying for it. Taxpayers are paying for it. So please, education is expensive because it's the most important asset you can have. It is never, ever free. So please, all the students out there in our universities are the most subsidized, the highly subsidized university fees I've ever seen in the world. Go to America, you know how much they are paying for school fees? The student loans die after they finish school and they can't even.
Absolutely.
Or it took Obama 8 years of being president to finish paying his student loan. And here it's being highly subsidized by the government for you, and you are taking it for granted. You won't pull your weight to create opportunities so that the government can make in new revenues to fund the next people. Now, JHS people, it's free. They are using the oil money, the gold money. That could have been used to build hospitals. That could have been used to build subways. That could have been used to build dams. That could have been used to build what? Spaceships. That could have been used to what? Build new ports to educate you. And you are joking with the whole process. You are joking with the whole process. And turn around and come and blame the same government. It is not free. Please. If your parents were paying that money, would you behave the way you are behaving? Would you skip classes? Would you skip assignments? Yes.
Understood.
If you love this country, do your part.
So, Cecil, I always appreciate your time and your passion and the fact that you bring your experience to bear in these conversations. Thank you so much for this. It's been very enlightening and educational. Thank you. I guess as we bring this together, there are two things on my mind. One is actually three things. So I'm going to go one step at a time. The first one is Cecil today. If he could talk to Cecil of 20 years ago, what would you tell him? Right?
A lot of stuff.
20 years ago, like what would you really tell him to, because I know he wouldn't believe Cecil of today. Like he's ambitious, but he doesn't know Cecil of today. So what would you tell him? That's number one. Number two is, what does the future look like for you? Right? So Cecil of the future, what's coming in the future? And the last thing, what would your advice be to that young entrepreneur who's clocked onto something and there's a journey ahead, but they think it should happen overnight? What would your advice to them be? Those are the three things. And I'll remind you if you forget any. Let's start with Cecil of 20 years ago. What would you tell him?
There's a lot running through my mind now, but I'm trying to find the right word. Like, don't take no for an answer. Like, and so what? Like, why not? Like, even if they give you all the evidence in the world that this is not possible, just try and see. Maybe you could make it possible. Don't just get convinced because everybody says, no, that's not how it works. I mean, that should even intrigue you to say, okay, if everybody thinks it's not going to work, maybe that means I should do it, because then that's the only way I can stand out. If I'm always doing what they say, I'm hardly going to stand out, right? So that's what I'll say, right?
Okay.
Yeah, like don't take no for an answer. Like I'm not
Yeah.
saying be right, like live in an illusion, or I'm not saying not face reality and all of that. But if you know what I'm saying, you will know. Like when everything looks like it's cast in stone, it will not work. Don't walk away. That's where you should stay and think more. Think more. And then you could just be the one to find it. And once you find it, they will start calling you genius.
If only Cecil 20 years ago knew all that. What's the future like? Outlook. Where are we going, Cecil? eCampus.
We're gonna be a lot. We're gonna create a lot of distractions, and I know people are not gonna be comfortable where we're heading, but with time, in hindsight, they will appreciate it. The education or the way education is being handled, right? Even globally, not just even on the continent, is handled around ability / skills, knowledge, and then teaching, right? So, I have the ability, I have the skill, right? Oh, I got the knowledge. I was taught by the best teachers. I went to the best school. So they have this self-entitlement that because of that, I must get a job and I must be paid 15,000 a month. That's wrong education you are giving up, because your ability, your skills, right, are not cast in stone. They keep changing. I mean, before you even graduate, your ability and skills are absolute. It's relative to whoever you are going to be working with. Your knowledge expires, right? The teacher who taught you was the best teacher, the best school, was a period. So I walk around and I see a lot of people all over the world, and their mindset, their worldview, their educated worldview is that I have the abilities and skills, I've got the knowledge, and I've got it from the best teachers in the best school. So I have this self-entitlement to succeed. Man, I'm sorry. It's wrong. So we're flipping it. We're flipping it. The orientation, the educated mindset going forward should be, I have desire and I can ignite my imaginations with my desires, and I can fuel that with feedback. If you have that mindset, that orientation, then your desire can then push you to keep improving on your ability and skills. Even when it become absolute, you get new one, you get new one. So it's an unending cycle. So I tell people desire is more important than ability and skills. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Even Einstein said that. And feedback is more important than teaching. Right? Grant Wing, right? Grant Wiggin, one of the best educators in the world. He kept saying that what? Learners need endless feedback more than they need endless teaching. So in the past 10 to 2 decades, the past 1 to 2 decades, you notice that all the graduates we produce, they have this entitlement, this ego of, yeah, I went to the best school, I was taught by the best teachers, I have all the knowledge, I have the ability and skills, so I determine the terms. You stay home. Nobody will work with you. Nobody will work with you. I will not work with you.
That matter of
But
factness
when we change it, the next decade, let's produce graduates with the educated mindset that says that, oh, I'm ready for feedback. I'll use it to fuel my imagination, and that will drive my desire. If you don't have desire, everything dies. I am where I am because I had desire to do something about how I felt society was treating me because of an exam. That desire that, no, I want to prove a point. Give me imagination to imagine some random things. And I played around those imaginations. Some failed. I took feedback, some worked, feedback. And I'm still imagining till today. That desire is still there. That fire has not died. So our education system should train people so that they can manifest their desires. Pass your exams is important. Acquire the skill is important. Acquire the knowledge is important, because that has been how school has been for over 2,000 years. So that's not negotiable. You get it. But what school hasn't been You get all this ability, knowledge, and the best school badge, best teacher, tap on the back, yet you don't have desire. You're dead on arrival. You don't have imagination. You can't do anything with the knowledge. And you are not ready to take feedback, my friend.
Ooh. So what's your advice for the young entrepreneur?
Okay, let me put it this way. Entrepreneurship is a profession. So treat it with respect. It's not a side thing. It's not a try and error thing. You know, you don't wake up and say, I'm going to law school, or I want to be a lawyer, so try and error. No. You go to law school, you finish, you go to the professional law school again, you get certificates, you get rules and get principles you follow before you get called to the bar, and then you can practice. Even that, you start from the back bench. So the same with accountant. You want to be an accountant, you do the normal one, you go and do ACCA, you charter, you learn under somebody, you go through. Before you become even partner of a what? An audit firm. It's not a small joke. So why do you think entrepreneurship is any different? Or because you could call yourself CEO at the very beginning? No. Because the lawyer can't call themselves what? Practicing lawyers from the beginning to even get to the bench. So you think that's more important or that's more serious? Or the accountants cannot call themselves what? Partner at the company from the very beginning. And you can call yourself CEO from the beginning, so you think you have arrived. You have not arrived. And it's even more complex than being a lawyer. It's more complex than being an accountant, right? Being what? Operations, supply chain. You are practically the brain of the entire vision of the organization. So you need to understand how to work with people. It's not about you. No, it has never been about you. The fact that they call you CEO means nothing. Excuse my language, the most useless job you can ever have. It means nothing. Your CEO-ness or your CEO status begins to make sense when the team around you are able to deliver results. Until then, just an unemployed youth trying to be diplomatic about it, saying he's a CEO. Like I was diplomatic about saying I will not go to university. I'll start my own business. At least now I have a BSc in entrepreneurship and SRE management. I have an MBA in what? Global Business and Sustainability. I have a postgraduate diploma in exponential technologies from NASA, Silicon. And now I'm doing another master's in Africa innovation, leadership at the what? How do you call it? Polymi Graduate School of what? Management at Politecnico in Milan. Somebody will say you never go to university. So please, I was just being diplomatic.
Just being diplomatic. You could read the way the thing was going. You're like, you know what? Let me preempt this conversation. Cecil, this has been an amazing, amazing, amazing session with you. I am not adding a single word to this beyond saying thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being open. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking us on a journey that's almost 3 decades long to learn what it really takes to have an organization like eCampus. And myself and everyone listening, I have no doubt, really is looking forward to the future. How eCampus is just going to continue to grow and really fuel EdTech education broadly, but also the fact that you are a beacon of what is possible, for me, is even more important, because what you represent is possibility. You represent challenging the status quo. You represent not taking no for an answer. You represent everything it takes to be successful. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, the pleasure is all mine.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for tuning in to The Bold New Normal. I hope this episode has inspired you to think boldly and take action towards creating the future you envision. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a dose of boldness today. Until next time, take action, create your bold new normal.